Hello and welcome to the Feel Freaking Amazing 5 Journeys podcast. I'm Wendy Trubo. My co-host can't be here today. I'm flying solo, but guess what? I have the coolest guest. Her name is Rachel Varga. She is a double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist. She's done over 20,000 procedures on people to make them radiant, improve their skin, detox their health. And we're going to dive into that today. So Rachel, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm thrilled to share some insights with everyone tuning into the show here on how to achieve the best skin of your life through non-toxic means. And we'll also talk about detoxing and this very important aspect of slowing cellular aging for the ultimate radiant experience.
You haven't yet mentioned anti-gravity, but I'm hoping that's there's pieces that are falling down as I enter my mid-50s, and I'm like, London Bridge needs to come up. So hopefully we'll cover that too.
Yes, well, that is a whole other topic of energy, which I am also very aware of and excited about. There's some components with that are linked to consciousness, believe it or not, with certain technology.
So before we dive into that, take me back a little bit. How did you ever get into aesthetics? Like, what was the moment where you said, okay, that's it, I'm doing aesthetics?
That's a great question. When I graduated from nursing school, I then went to work in med-surg, palliative oncology care, and realized from my mother, who's also a registered nurse, that I didn't want to do the hospital grind because what it did to her was, 210 pounds later, breast cancer, night shifts. I mean, she sacrificed a lot to put me through an excellent school in my younger years. So I wanted to do things a little bit differently and not burn myself out in an effort to provide care for others, but to fill my cup as well. And then I went into peds ICU nursing. I worked with little ones that were trached and vented. And then I considered becoming a medical doctor myself, like you, Wendy. So then I did my med school prerequisites and found a surgeon that I wanted to work with who was in ophthalmology and oculoplastics and also did aesthetics. And I wanted to understand the runnings of a clinic to see if it was right for me. And then I got my certifications and tons of training. We're talking years of training, evenings, weekends, for years to truly understand how to employ these rejuvenation options. And then I realized that, wow, this is my love, to have people come and see me either in person or online. I do a lot of work for clients online all over the globe, have for many years. And then I started to notice this subset of clients of mine that were coming to see me in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they meet with me, and I could just see that something was very different and beautiful and radiant about them. And then I started to ask them questions about what they were doing. And they all had various body, mind, spirit, energy practices, but they all had practices in those regards. And they would say things like, I feel great on the inside. However, I feel like my skin isn't reflecting it. Let's do something about it. And then I noticed that these individuals had more powerful rejuvenation outcomes and could actually rely much more on their non-toxic skincare routines at home dermal rolling practices, living a toxin-reduced lifestyle, maybe doing some biohacking as well. And they lived a slower paced life with their families and community. So this led me down the rabbit hole of why is the subset of clients that I work with achieve much greater outcomes with fewer interventions than, 90% home care, 10% in clinic, as opposed to the other way around. And that actually then led me to write one of my very recent research articles. I love writing academic papers on the topic of rejuvenation. So my latest one, which I think everyone is going to be excited to learn about, is how environmental toxins in our space, in our home, in our office impact the skin, and how we can modulate them to slow aging and reduce signs of skin inflammation.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir for me. And I think a lot of our listeners are really into how do we decrease our toxins? I'm a huge proponent of get rid of the crap that you're putting on your body because it's harmful for you and it's not helping you. But Talk to me. I know, are you allowed to talk about your paper before you present it? Because I know you're presenting shortly at a conference, but are you allowed to talk about the things that you found, the high points for the listeners? And if there's any take-home messages like do this and don't do this that are really concrete?
Absolutely. Yes, it's actually in the publication process now, and it will be open source. And I did that intentionally so that everyone could read it because it's great information for the general public to pick up on. What I focused on were air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and detoxing methods and strategies, as well as some of the things that are coming down the pipeline, including exosomes and stem cells, which is still a little bit controversial, especially in the aesthetic space. However, our colleagues who do things like functional longevity clinics, they've been doing some of these things for years. So it's kind of my job to get the aesthetics industry sort of up to speed with what some of these top practitioners are doing. So yes, we can go through these 5 key aspects, which I know you like to work a lot with 5s as well. Air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and regular detoxing. And then another paper we'll be talking about food and all of that as well, and the gut connection to the skin.
I mean, air and water, which is 40% of what you've referenced, is responsible. This is back in 1989 in Massachusetts, which has, all of these universities did a study and showed that 1 in 6 deaths were due to air or water quality. Now, when you sort of back that up, it makes sense that skin quality is going to relate to air and water because it's really, you can't get away from it. Right? It's what we do all day. So talk to me about how do we know that we have air or water issues by what's reflected on our skin? Like, how do you draw that? How do you know as a consumer that something's not right?
Well, if you're not purifying your air or your water, you can just assume that through you're getting exposure to heavy metals. And in the home and office, we have particulates resting on the skin, like dirt, debris, pollution, mold, and also the heavy metals in the air. And what that does to the skin is it actually results in oxidative stress and free radical formation. That's why cleansing your skin in the AM and the PM, actually doing a double cleanse in the PM, is critical to remove that debris off. I started to notice after a number of years working with clients that had red, inflamed skin, itchy, red, puffy darkness around their eyes, they would often relate to me that they were washing their face with water once a day, or they were using heavily oil-based skincare products. And a lot of skincare products that are heavily oil-based are now switching out to use hydrogenated vegetable oil. And I'm seeing this in some of the biggest, touted as non-toxic beauty brands. This happens when a company gets bought and then they want to increase their margins and then they start using not so good oils. So hydrogenated vegetable oil is basically a mixture of often canola oil, which is highly inflammatory. When it comes to the air, you want to just have the knowledge that you need to purify it. So there are some strategies to doing so. Having your windows open, surprisingly, yes, really good for movement and circulation, especially of energy. However, you do want to be sleeping with an air purifier. You want to have an air purifier in your kitchen and main living space for when you're cooking. It's going to help to take away those volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, that can be damaging to the skin and the eyes. Air purification is absolutely critical. If you've ever walked into a big box store and you smell the packaging, your nose is giving you a signal into your brain that, hey, there's some toxins in here. Or, this is the kicker. This is the funny part. A lot of women use perfumes in an effort to be more beautiful, but little do they know that they're often spraying phthalates, which are hormone disrupting chemicals, which is also in the water supply through the PVC piping, which I discovered in my research. And so we're spraying this perfume on our delicate neck area right next to our thyroid. And when I do consultations with clients and they have hormone issues, they have, thyroid disease, I'm taking a look at what they're using skincare wise. And everything they're using are hormone disruptors, from parabens, phthalates, sulfates, artificial dyes, and fragrances.
I have a question, Rachel, because I get this question a lot, which is, how does one pick an air purifier are there certain criteria? And I'm always saying, okay, pick the one that filters to the highest level possible, and is a HEPA grade. But are there other tips that you have for women or men who want to filter the air, especially where you're sleeping and where you're cooking? How do you pick one? It's overwhelming.
It can be, and the price point can also be dissuading those from, pulling the trigger on it. Now, there's some really affordable options out there that are really small units. I actually just unplugged one of mine that I have in my office here. It's about a $150 unit, and it uses a carbon filter with a UV bulb. And the UV bulb can actually kill viruses and bacteria. And then the carbon filter traps large particulates. And then I have another air purifier in my main living space that, yes, uses a carbon filter, a HEPA filter, and then it also ionizes the air. So there are two brands that I like the most. And I actually have a favorites and biohacking page where I list out all the favorite tools that I've trialed myself. A lot of times I've bought them myself and they've stood the test of time. So I do make things easy in that regard with that resource. And there are so many different air purifiers out there you can get at, again, some of these big box stores, and they're just not adequate enough because they're not trapping things like mold, for example, or if people have central air or air purifiers in their ducts, a lot of times those filters themselves can accumulate biological matter and become a breeding ground. So you don't always want to rely on the central air circulation in your home or your office. You do want to have some standalone air purifiers. There's about 7 to 8 different air purification methods, which I reference in my paper, depending on, how small or large of the particle you want to go. If you're in a commercial industrial setting, if you're in an OR, there are different methods used for that. But for the home, carbon filter, HEPA filter, ionization, UV catalytic converters work really well.
Are there any things people should avoid when they're looking at filters? Like there's the do's, but are there do nots? Like do not fill in the blank. Is there anything?
Yeah, there are some filters out there that are simply just a carbon filter and they're not quite adequate enough, or they don't do a large enough living space. One of the air purifiers that I really like in the kitchen living area that I have, it actually can auto detect when there's more volatile organic compounds in the air. So there's 3 different settings. So it'll be on this, cruise blue setting. And then if it notices something, it'll kind of go to orange. And if you're, really cooking or frying something up, then it goes to red. So there are different types of products out there that are just on all the time or that can kick on into higher gear and they're going to be a little bit louder for a shorter period of time.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Because we have smart homes, we have smartphones, we have smart cars at this point. So the filter should really come along and understand when we're doing more, which makes a lot of sense.
However, they're not Bluetooth. And when it comes to smart, this is where we can definitely dive into EMFs shortly here, because reducing exposure to EMFs is absolutely critical for getting blood flow to your organs. There's actually different types of photography on the market that can measure the blood flow to the skin. And when an individual is outside, they're barefoot. I had an entire late afternoon evening at the beach yesterday with eagles and deer and sea lions and seals. And oh my goodness, it was just nothing short of magical. And when we're slowing down, we're in nature, we're actually getting better blood flow to all of our organs. So we can talk about the research with EMFs. However, I do recommend we jump to water.
Yes.
Yeah. So with water, there are a number of different agents that are used to kill microbes in water treatment plants. And then we also have pharmaceuticals in the water supply, and then the piping that transports the water from the plant to your home or office space. Those pipes never get cleaned. And in fact, a lot of those pipes can be PVC piping, which release phthalates, which are in some skincare products, primarily in fragrances, that are known hormone disruptors. And then the biological film, the biofilm buildup in the pipes, they really can impact the skin. So at the end of the day, what we want to do with air, water, lighting, electromagnetics is reduce our toxic bucket. And technically, this is called the oxidative stress status. The emptier our bucket is, the better we're going to feel, the more clear our skin is going to be, the less acne we're going to experience, things like rosacea, hyperpigmentation, hair loss, accelerated aging, fine lines, and wrinkles. When you're bathing, what you can do that's really simple and affordable is use an appropriate shower head filter. And I actually have one on my favorites page as well. And this is important for bathing in, so that you're not washing yourself in, chemicals and phthalates and all sorts of things, which is actually going to make your hair also not feel very good. And if you can do whole home filtration, that is the dream. That's really expensive. And then with your water that you're drinking and cooking with, distilled water, there's a few different types of purification methods for water. Distilled water is what we've used in lab, Gen Chem, Organic Chem, Biochem days, where we're doing reactions and we're doing it in glass with distilled water. And there's some excellent, affordable, even countertop reverse osmosis options that uses a membrane to help filter out particulates. And drinking purified water, bathing in purified water is essential. Bonus tip, if you even decide to wash your face with excellent alkaline spring water, that can actually really help the skin as well. And bathing with purified water and consuming purified water is everything, and not using plastics.
Yeah, we got a whole house water filter a couple years ago, and we're still doing point of use in the kitchen. And we changed our filters a couple months ago, and it was just a couple weeks past when it should have been done. They were black. They started out lily white, and they were muddy, brownish black. And I was like, oh my God. And we have pretty good water where we live, but we filtered it anyway, because of my struggles with mold and metal. And I went nuts. I was like, we're filtering everything. That's it. So we filtered our water, and we got this filter. It's amazing what you don't get exposed to when you filter your water, even when you have good water. I think the hardest part about it is perchlorate is only removed by the reverse osmosis, and you can't get a whole house reverse osmosis. So at least when we bought it, we couldn't. So that was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely your shower head filter, which is relatively affordable. And again, a couple $100 for an excellent countertop reverse osmosis is definitely doable for most people. The other thing I want to talk about are using these coffee makers or kettles that are plastic, because as soon as that water boils, it's going to be releasing the BPAs, right? Which again are known hormone disruptors linked to cancer, especially breast cancer and endocrine disruptor. When you're making your tea or your coffee, boil it in a glass kettle, and make sure that kettle also doesn't have a plastic spout. And then for your coffee, go for a good old glass and stainless steel French press. Forget the filters, forget the plastic coffee makers and the pods. All of these layers in your lifestyle. This took me since, 2017 when I first learned about this word biohacking, the art and science of modulating our environment to support our body. It takes a while to employ these things, but when you know these things, you can't unknow them. And I'm particularly interested in the skin and slowing aging component through reducing our levels of toxic exposure to things day in and day out.
Yeah. And it's not just a one-shot deal. You really highlight it's a lifestyle, as opposed to, you're not going to, and I do really want to talk about detox and what you mean by that, because when I say detox and when you say detox and when other people say detox, they can mean a lot of different things. So I'm very curious. Let's put water to rest, and can we skip to detox and talk, and we'll come back to the EMFs. Can you talk to me what you mean by detox when you say detoxification?
Excellent. In my interviews with other detoxing experts that are also part of our community, I posted, I think, about 400 interviews. And I love learning from other experts in different fields and then putting that angle of the skin on it. Now, when it comes to detoxing, the skin is actually our largest organ. So when I'm working with the skin, it's not as superficial as you might think. And some of the best ways to detox are through the skin. So, for example, regular sweating, whether that's through exercise, through sauna use, love sauna use. And I recommend you do get your own sauna, whether it's, the big sauna that you have in your home, or a sauna blanket is a little bit more of an affordable and compact option that you can store away with an inner lining that you can launder. Sweating is really key for detoxing, as well as ionic foot baths. So we're getting into energy here. You mentioned energy. So these ionic foot baths are really interesting. They're using a specific amplitude with a Tesla coil. So we've used Tesla technologies for, every type of modern electronic that we have. It completely changed humanity and civilization in the way that we work. And this can also be very healing for us. And when you do an ionic foot bath for the first time, you look down at the water at the end of your 30 to 45 minute session, and you're thinking, wow, good heavens, that was in my body. What this coil does, and you're adding salt to maintain a specific amplitude during your session, is it's pulling out heavy metals, it's pulling out cellular fragments, and we accumulate these senescent cells in our body. It's almost like the leaves on the tree that need to be pruned off. And they basically just pull nutrients and energy from the body. So that's why long fasts actually are excellent, autophagy, and then doing detoxing as well to get those cellular fragments out of the body. So we've talked about sauning, we've talked about ionic foot baths. I have some of my favorite recommendations on my favorites page, like I said. And then there's also the concept of detoxing the elephant in the room, which are yeast, fungi, parasites, and mold, and especially heavy metals. And in my research for my paper, sometimes people think they have adult acne, and it can actually be something called Morgellons disease, which is a parasitic infection. And in my research looking at parasitologists with over 40 years of experience, there's a huge link with parasites and cancer, Lyme's disease, right? If any of you listening have a dog and you've dewormed your dog, but you forgot to deworm yourself, well, this might be the nudge you need to actually do something to cleanse out yeast, fungi, mold, parasites. We, especially women, we're great hosts, and with our physiology, we receive.
And
right?
we're loyal, right? Loyal recipients.
Yes. I mean, these are all beautiful feminine qualities, right? Being receptive. However, this can also make us excellent hosts. And through the research, 80% of North Americans actually have an active parasitic infection. You just might not know it. I started a detox, the highly alkaline diet with a specific protocol. And within about a week or two, I started passing parasites. And I'm an outdoor enthusiast. I love the woods. For a while there, I was drinking river water, which was...
Jeez.
You're
very brave, Rachel.
Yes, I'm quite the outdoor enthusiast. Don't let the blonde hair fool you. 4x4ing and, 300 miles out of cell reception. I am the help, by the way, one vehicle, solo, 4x4ing. But this is what keeps me young, getting in nature. And little did I know, it took me from March to December to actually clear these things. So a lot of times people do a detox and think, it's a week, it's 10 days, it's 2 weeks. No, these organisms can take months to clear out from the body. And simply putting your body in an alkaline state allows things to be flushed out. Different herbs can be helpful. And what I started to notice, I had no skin signs of having any type of these infections, but clearly I started passing them. And a lot of times when people have overgrowths of yeast, candida, molds, parasites, they'll have skin issues like eczema or psoriasis, itchy scalp, hair loss, brain fog, the list goes on, right? Basically, these organisms are pulling your nutrients from you being radiant. They're feeding themselves, but they got to go. This, whole thing about boundaries as well. Don't even get me started on relationship boundaries is very important. We got to have boundaries with organisms too. And these are bad organisms. So don't feel bad about getting rid of them. And then in the first week or two, I started to, the first couple of days, I didn't feel so good. However, then I came out on the other end of it. And the amount of mental clarity that I received was incredible. I was having difficulties with forming coherent sentences and brain fog, pain, nervous system dysregulation. I had all of those symptoms, but I didn't have the skin symptoms, and I didn't pin it to that. And then after doing the detoxing, I started to notice that my skin wasn't breaking out as much. I could actually be out in the sun much longer and not go red and burn as easily, as well as my hairline. Oh, my hair started just coming back full force. I do recommend hair growth stimulating products that are non-toxic. I can recommend some. And so I started to notice these beautiful hair, skin, nail impacts and brain impacts and nervous system regulation impacts. And I was actually even watching a show, and the periphery of the TV screen, I was seeing flashes. And what this was, because I've been researching this, was actually central nervous system organism die-off, releasing toxins that were causing some visual disturbances. So these things can impact our psychological wellness in a big way. They can disrupt your sleep. They can wake you up in the middle of the night. And if you have any type of gut disturbance, this is actually a potential indicator that there are some organisms living in you that you just need to tell them to go away.
So to recap, so women or men who are experiencing, are there certain types of skin disturbances that you feel are particularly associated with parasites? You mentioned the eczema and the psoriasis.
Yeah,
or anything?
Morgellons disease can present as acne. And then people will often go on, acne medications and all that. And of course, this isn't medical advice. This is educational information only. If you think you have a medical condition, you must seek the guidance of a licensed physician. Breakouts, hyperpigmentation, seemingly aging overnight. The psychological disturbances are big. The central nervous system dysregulation, feeling anxious all the time. But the skin stuff, it's usually rashes. It's like patchiness, eczema, psoriasis. These are all linked to overgrowth. Is basically a sign of your oxidative stress status or your toxic bucket being full when we become very in tune and intuitive with what our hair, skin, nails, and our cognitive function and our gut is trying to tell us. Then we can ensure that we are relying on our purification, maybe stepping up the sauna use, the ionic foot baths, doing that cleanse that's in your cabinet that you haven't done yet. These can be nudges.
What were the high points of your alkaline program that you did for our listeners?
Well, high points, that can be when I felt really good or when I started to feel, better than I ever felt. I didn't know I could feel this well. That was the high point. And then the other thing was during that, actually, after we first met at a health conference, I then decided to go do a week-long camping trip in Sedona and integrate and, put all these beautiful creative thoughts together and get very grounded, because these are very go types of events where you're just learning and connecting so much. And then my body said, you know what? You're going to do a fast. You're going to be camping. You're going to be washing your face in the river and hiking around. And I actually did a 5 to 7 day long fast where I was still consuming about 400 calories of food. Mineralized hydrogen water was a big part of what I was drinking. That's pretty high tech stuff. Probably not many people at that time doing that in the world. And having some fruits, some really good protein bars. There's some excellent products out there because when you're hiking and you're in nature, you still need to have calories and electrolytes, so you don't need a rescue. But my body just told me, you're going to do this. And the first couple of days at the event, the food was so keto that my body just started the process. I was actually in a lot of pain at the event from previous car crashes. So the first couple of days are pretty rough. And then you get on to the other end of that. And there's actually some research that shows doing long fasts about once a year can reduce the likelihood of cancer developing because you're clearing out all those senescent cells. And this can be hard to do. So doing it in nature is a really fun way to do it. Do it with your family.
My husband and I did a 5-day fast. This is years ago. I would say, I think this was in between my first and second child, maybe after my second. I'm not exactly sure. It was somewhere years ago.
You have 4 beautiful ones.
I have 4.
Yeah.
And they're old. My oldest is actually going off to college in a couple of months. And so I did this fast. I wasn't nursing at the time. I calculated at one point I had been pregnant or nursing for over 11 years. So it was obviously in the gap, right? I wasn't pregnant or nursing. Very small period of time. So we did a 5-day water fast with herbs and fiber, so that and herbs that would promote gut movement. And it was really amazing because I always figured I had never done anything like that. And I figured, oh, I would be starving and I would get progressively hungrier. And the most amazing part was I never got hungrier than very hungry. I got very hungry and then it passed. I never got hungry. I always thought it would just escalate. And that was amazing to me that it didn't escalate, because I all of a sudden had this power over, usually when I'm hungry, I need to eat, I'm hungry. And I got this whole new understanding of, oh, it's going to pass and I'm going to be okay, right? Like I'll actually be fine with this. That was a really cool experience because I didn't have a lot of relationship to how I felt being impermanent. I thought it was real and like, no, I got to eat now. It's kind of cool.
Yes. I've been, trying out intermittent fasting for years, and I don't know, just didn't move the needle for me. So doing this longer fast also felt very biblical. Here I am hiking, it's beautiful sunshine next to these beautiful rivers.
And Sedona too, like such an energetically cool place.
Oh my gosh, there's vortexes everywhere. This was a place that my heart was pulled to. I am a nature babe through and through. I go where my heart pulls me, and I'm always rewarded for it. And yes, when you start to clear out these pathogens, different sugar cravings, hunger cravings will fall away. And then you really start to support your body. And my whole physiology changed. My body composition changed. That last little bit around my waist, I'm fairly slim and fit, but there was just this like extra bloat I just wasn't moving the needle on with intermittent fasting. I don't think I could do a full water fast. I did have to have some calories with it, but it was completely transformative. And what it also did was really get me to reevaluate my entire life. And so I got back to the house. It's like, no, I don't want to live here anymore. This life is no longer for me, because psychologically I was functioning better. I was more clear. And then I left that home, did a detox test actually while I was there. And then a couple months later, I got my results. And in that meantime, I had started actually saunaing in the AM and PM. And then I got the results back, and 3 different types of mycotoxins showed up. So just when your body gives you that nudge to do things, it's really important for you to listen. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny because I will not speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I'm very vain and I like to look good. And I know we're not talking about food in this podcast, but I will say that there was a time when we were having evening meetings and it was very stressful, and we would always bring snacks. And they were all gluten-free because I'm gluten-free, but they were, I don't know, do you have Trader Joe's where you are? Do you have that?
Well, I mean, I travel all the time. So whatever I need is where I need it, where I get it.
So I
also travel with a ton of supplements. Let's be clear.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I always travel with all my supplements. Everything. So we were having snacks, the Trader Joe's organic corn dippers, which are literally my favorite salty snack in the world. But I found that when I ate them too much, I got these massive, and I'm talking like, 1.5 inch cystic lesions all over my face. And that was it. I was like, okay, we're done, because I don't want to look like that, right? I didn't want to have that. So as tempting as it is, it didn't work in my body. I got a very clear no, like it wasn't happy.
To be honest, my experience with Trader Joe's, I'm reading the labels. I think it used to be better, but there is canola oil in almost everything in that store now. And it's really disappointing to see that. Same with some of the other quote unquote healthy stores. You're better off finding that local grocer that has better options. You said something about the shadow side of beauty and radiance, and I love looking at these aspects. So I'm going to share something with you. The positive sides of beauty and radiance are self-expression, creativity, enthusiasm, and sociability. So a lot of times people are interested in having, better skin and improving their appearance, reducing some of the signs of aging so that they feel more confident being social, because at the end of the day, we're highly community-based beings. We're not meant to be isolated. So that's the positive side of rejuvenation, so that we present our best version and then we get that back. However, the shadow side, which you touched on, of beauty and radiance is conceit, carelessness, which then entails buying toxic products that end up in the drawer where products go to die, and secretiveness, potentially hiding your rejuvenation out of fear of being found out from your friends, family, loved ones. So I love looking at these different aspects. And there's actually a specific reason why I named my show the way that I did, because it's in alignment with the numbers that represent this. So that's the light and the dark side of beauty and rejuvenation. The other really interesting thing about the long fast that I did was the EMF mitigation and reduction. Now, more and more people are discussing electromagnetic frequencies and radiation. So when you mentioned smart homes and smart cars, little do people know they're literally just blasting themselves with a form of radiation. This is not a form of radiation that humans can evolve through. And in fact, on this call, I'm business on top in this beautiful blush pink satin shirt with my silver pants down below. I'm always wearing and sleeping in EMF protective clothing. I'll wear things underneath my outfits. Basically, it's silver threads to help shield you. Because we can't really get away from using this type of technology in our lives. However, what it does to the blood is really important for you to know. And there's a ton of research that's come out on this. When you're on your phone for 5 minutes, what happens to your blood is your red blood cells start to stick together. And they should be like inner tubes, nicely bouncing from, healthy, balanced electromagnetic interactions. These blood cells start to clump together and form chains called rouleau. And then we get clotting factors, that we have an impairment with blood flow to our skin, to our brain, to our organs, to our gut. And then we also have a reduction in detoxification, the carrying away of CO2 and metabolic waste products. So starting to employ EMF protective shielding clothing, I think, is really important. I do see this being the smoking of our generation. So all this smart stuff, convenience is killing us these days. So if you're listening to this episode on those Bluetooth AirPods, I highly recommend you switch to a wired air tube set. It's really, really, really important. Because at the end of the day, we simply need our blood to flow. We need movement in our body, and EMFs impair this. They also result in skin disturbances. EMFs is actually a free radical precipitator in the skin. So we can actually see more signs of skin redness, skin sensitivity. And also for the eyes, we're seeing people in younger ages now. My girlfriend's 43 and she has to have cataract surgery. This is something that usually happens in the, when we hit 70s and 80s, right? It's the blue light as well. So this is also where lighting comes into play. You might think, oh, the light outside. I love sunshine. When you take the right antioxidants, your toxic bucket is empty. You can be outside for longer and receive the beautiful benefits of that and circadian rhythm balancing. However, indoors, the blue lighting is just as disruptive. The LED lights in your overhead lights, your computer lighting, your device lighting, they're just as disruptive on the skin as UV, but we're getting more of it. So I got these blue light blocking glasses on that I wear all the time to protect my eyes, but also the skin around my eyes.
That's very sensitive skin. Now, we have only a little time left, Rachel, and I know we've talked about air, water, EMFs, and detox. What's the fifth category of what we want to pay attention to? I'm totally blanking.
Yes, that was lighting. So air, water,
lighting, okay.
Lighting, electromagnetics, and detoxing. And then, of course, looking at our personal care products, what we're brushing our teeth with, what we're using as deodorant, what we're washing with for ourselves and our family, the shampoos, conditioners, the skincare products, the makeup that we're using, all need to be free of parabens, phthalates, sulfates, artificial dyes, fragrances, none of this hydrogenated vegetable oil. So that's where I come in to make this process much easier and streamlined. It's really important to avoid that.
Well, let's talk about that. Where can people find you? I know that you have a special gift for the listeners. And like, I'm assuming you're all on social. So how can people find you, follow you, and interact with you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you can look me up, Rachel Varga. My last name will be changing at some point.
Oh,
And that's
congratulations.
Thank you. I recently rebranded the Rachel Varga podcast to the Always Radiant Skin podcast. And that's where you can hang out. I do a ton of solo interviews as well as on YouTube, where I host my interviews with other guests like yourself, Wendy. And you can learn everything that I offer, how I work, how you can work with me over at rachelvarga.ca. Use promo code 5J15 for 15% off site-wide. Your one-on-one at-home and in-clinic skin rejuvenation consultation for skincare recommendations based on your customized needs, as well as I showcase tutorials on how to use these products and different seasonal skin updates in my seasonal skin camps. And then I also offer the School of Radiance for those of you who have maybe already been doing this work, and then they're wanting to add that additional layer to being a radiant human, which comes into practice, positive emotional mindset, speaking in a more beautiful, radiant way, gestures, boundaries, all the deep stuff to being truly beautiful, radiant, and magnetic, which so many of my clients have been asking me for years. Rachel, what do you do behind the scenes to be beautiful, radiant, and resilient? So everything is at rachelvarga.ca and use promo code 5J15. And then I also have my free skincare checklist over at skincarechecklist.com. So whatever products you're using now, this will just give you insights as to maybe how to use them a little bit better and what they do.
This is fantastic, Rachel. Everyone should go to your website, get the products that are favorite, look into air filters. And I'm assuming you have recommendations for everything. So go to that site and follow you. What are you on all of social? What's your favorite social?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Rachel Varga Official, everything from the main page, rachelvarga.ca. I make huge transformative time in my life, which has its challenges, but also has its beautiful transformations, right? And so if you go to rachelvarga.ca, you'll find everything. I have so many resources. I'm simply a humble human on a mission to help other humans become more beautiful and radiant. And the more toxic free we are, the more likelihood we're going to be able to be in that state. Even something like consciousness, to a suppression of consciousness is actually through environmental toxins and disease. So you want to be beautiful. You want to have beautiful interactions with yourself, people, places, and things. This is what I teach. This is my life's work and my mission.
Everyone should go follow you, find you, and interact with you and join the movement, right? This is all about being the best who you can be, vital, vibrant, healthy, able, and interested in intimacy till you're at least 100, and that every decade gets better than the one before. So if you're listening, you're probably in that movement anyway, and Rachel's part of it. So find Rachel, follow her. Don't stalk her. That would be weird, but do like appropriate interactions. So Rachel, as we reach the end of the show, thank you for being here for this episode. It's really been such a great intro into how to have radiant skin and be a human who is healthy outside and inside, right? It's not just, the skin's the representation of who you are. So thank you for being here and sharing with the listeners and your generosity.
My pleasure.
And for the listeners, thanks for being here for another episode of the Feel Freaking Amazing podcast. Our guest is Rachel Varga. Follow her, find her, and thanks for listening.